Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race, we are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 406 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here and excited for this conversation today with my guest, who is Izzy Seidel. Izzy Seidel, yes, you may know her as the sister of Olympic medalist Molly Seidel, but Izzy actually has done so much in the running community herself. You're going to hear about some of the roles that she had prior to this huge community that she has created. But Izzy is the creator and founder of the Sad Girl Track Club, which is a huge online group. I encourage you to go find it on Strava, find it on social media, and to follow along with that, along with her own social media and content. But you're going to hear in this episode today, we actually had a deep dive into a few of the struggles that not only has Izzy worked through over the years, but I've actually worked through very similar things. One of those is kind of coming to terms with the fact that you are no longer or not currently able to do what you used to do. We also talk about the content creation side of things and how it may appear that these roles that we see people in as content creators, as quote unquote influencers, there's a dark side to that. And we talk a lot about that in this episode. So I am excited to welcome one of our sponsors and we'll be right to this episode with Izzy Seidel. Fueling my body with whole foods is important, but I have to admit mine is not perfect. That's always why I start my day with AG1. I come down the stairs, I fill up my jug with water, put in a scoop of AG1, and it ensures that I'm filling any nutritional gaps that I might be missing with the food that I'm eating. AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that delivers daily nutrients and gut health support and is backed by multiple research studies so you can trust what you're putting in your body. I trust AG1 because unlike so many products, the entire formula is backed by research studies, not just the ingredients. If you care about the food you put in your body, why should the supplement you put in be any different? I know my body by this point, and I know that I'm missing some points nutritionally, but I know that I also am not able to absorb everything that comes in. With AG1, I'm prioritizing my body, and I'm also giving it the gut health that I have found to be really important to feeling good. Digestion is one of the most important factors in helping your body to receive high quality nutrition. And in a recent study, they found that AG1 doubled the amount of healthy bacteria in our gut, specifically 2 of the most prominent species known to support gut and whole body health. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for 5 years. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Try AG1 free and get a free 1-year free supply of vitamin D3 K2 and 5 free travel work packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/Tina. That's drinkag1.com/Tina. Check it out. Izzy, welcome to the Running for Real podcast. I am excited that you are here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
You and I, our lives have been intertwining for many years in various different formats. But I think now I really love the fact that, today I want to talk about that you and I have both gone from a place of understanding that there is value and beauty in, yes, chasing, pursuing, and having, trying to reach your potential, but also there's a lot of beauty in being in a phase where if that's not a priority, that is okay. And you can still love the sport and be there for the sport and support others in the sport, even if you personally, currently can't be that person. So I'm excited.
Yes, no, I could not agree more with that statement.
Well, to start that off, I actually don't want to talk about Molly Belly at all, but has that been...
You don't like her here, no?
Yeah. Has that been on that note of what I just said there? Is it weird that you are in a phase that you are kind of stepped back, and yet you have a sister who is at the top of their game, really, seeing what they are capable of? Does that ever like tug that part of you?
It's funny. I think like Molly is such an important person in my life. And to the people that don't know who Molly is, she is an Olympic medalist in the marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But I always, so many people have asked me, even back when I was competing at like a very high level, like, oh, is there any competition there? Is there any jealousy there?
Mm.
And Molly is the reason why I even ever started running in the first place. She was never any type of competition to me. If anything, she was really a huge motivation into where I got today. And sure, there's definitely, I think when Molly and I lived together, maybe it was a slightly different story where it was really hard seeing the level that she trained at and not getting caught up in that. Because in my mind, this is such a twisted view, but I thought it was normal to be training at the level that she trained at, especially, when I lived in Boston and a lot of my friends were very casually training for the Olympic trials. So it wasn't just her, it was kind of this whole like environment of intensity. And I think that I definitely got super caught up in. I was maybe in the best shape of my life at one point, but there were many times where I caught myself thinking like, how sustainable is this? And it wasn't sustainable. And I am no longer in that position. But I think now Molly and I, although she sure is like at the top of her sport, she's also gone through the lowest of lows. She's hit the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So I think I have a lot of perspective on seeing her life very up close and personal, that it is not it's not perfect all the time. And I know that like what it takes to run at her level. And that's frankly not something I want to do. So I think like at the end of the day, long story short, Molly is such an important person in my life because she is so inspiring and encouraging. But it's really, I finally have hit a point in my life where it's like, okay, we are different people. I don't need to be doing that, nor will I ever be doing that. So
that's such a important sign of like growth to be able to reach that point, especially with someone that is not only that physically close to you, but mentally close to you. You've got the like years of bond. My sister was never, I mean, she did 10K once and she worked her ass off to do that. But that's it. And so I've never really had that piece of it. But one of my best friends is a professional ultra runner. And he will talk about doing like a 4-hour run one day and then a 3-hour run the next day and then a 6-mile run the next day and then another 4-hour run. And I'm just like, if that is what it takes to be the best at ultra, I'm out. Like, I don't want that. I can't do that.
I see what Molly has to do to run at the level that she does. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like, that does not sound fun to me.
Yeah. So. And it doesn't mean it, and as you said, it can skew your perception. And I'm sure you're the same in that, like, now that you and I are in amongst like normal people, who aren't training at those levels, sometimes I catch myself saying things like, not right now because I'm not running, but I'm only at like 40 to 50 miles a week. And then feeling that person look at me like, are you serious right now? Yeah. And I'm like, I know. That sounds ridiculous. I understand.
Like, we are one and the same, I think. I think that's the hard part. I now, having dealt with like transparently in the past 3 years, have been the hardest years of my life health-wise. I've dealt with a lot of health issues, and it's so hard because I think back to the times when I was running 50 miles a week and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm only running 50 miles a week. Now I can't run. So it's all perspective. Like, I would kill to be able to just go out for a run and not have to deal with any problems or have to deal with all of the things that I've now had to just like accept. And I'm constantly working on it, but it's all about perspective, because it's like you don't know what you have until you no longer have it. And yeah, it like sucks. But I do think like of all of those I don't want to say the health problems were a blessing, but they definitely give you a lot of perspective on life and make you realize that there are things that are important and things that are not as important as you thought they were. And it's not life or death. And like, this is just running at the end of the day. And I am so much more just driven towards being and feeling healthy now than being fast. Being fast used to be like everything to me. And I'm like, I can hardly run. So I just want to be able to feel good in my body. And it's constantly a battle, but we're getting there.
And what are some of the things that you have had to work through? Like, I definitely, remember that period myself of trying to figure out like who I was without this. Did people even want to hear from me if I wasn't like, at the top of my game? Like, what are some of the things that have been difficult for you to work through during this time?
I think so. And this is like kind of where Sad Girl Track Club grew out of. But I mean, I ran in college. I pretty much just always had run at a really elite level. And then I ended up getting diagnosed with Lyme disease. That was like about 2 years ago, but I had had it for a while before I had figured it out. So one, it was super frustrating, like trying to figure out like what is going on with my body and why is this, like, why me? Why is this happening? It was very frustrating because a lot of my life revolved around running. And especially having worked at a company that was like running, to the listeners that don't know,
I was going to say, you can say the word,
Tracksmith, for 2 years. And so much of my life revolved around running because of that. And like elite intent, not necessarily like, I don't want to say it was like the most intense environment ever, but like everybody was super into running. And it was like, it just kind of fed into me wanting to be faster and better. And then I moved to New York City. And I started having all of these health problems. And I was like, what is going on here? And I was forced to, it was like I did not have a choice in getting to slow down. It was like, my body was like, okay, we're slowing down. We're taking a break. And I didn't want that to be the case, but it had to be. Like, I felt like I was literally falling apart. And I kind of just had to find other ways to, one, like have a social outlet, be happy without necessarily being able, because running was like the only sport that I really did. Like growing up, we did a lot of sports, but then once it hit high school and college, running was the sport. And it continued post college because when I moved to Boston, running was once again the sport. And at work, that was the sport. And so it kind of forced me to figure out other ways to make myself happy and find movement that wasn't running. And I think like, so yeah, it did suck that, I have Lyme disease. It's something I still deal with. I have found joy in so many other forms of activity now. And sure, like racing gives me a lot of anxiety now. Like racing is not something I really have any plans on doing anytime soon because I still do have a very hard time putting myself in a position where I'm competing and knowing that I'm like not going to be able to reach kind of the results that I used to be able to, really not that long ago. But it's really made me realize like, okay, I love Pilates. I love cycling. I love walking. I can do things socially that don't need to be about running. And I think that's then going back to, I started Sad Girl Track Club because it was an outlet for me to kind of like make myself feel okay about the fact that like I might never PR again. I might not get faster, but at least I can still enjoy this in some way. We can still laugh about it. I can still participate in it, but I might not participate in it in a way that I used to be able to, which is hard to accept. But sometimes those are the cards you're dealt. So.
Oh yes, I understand that well. Well, firstly, from you saying about the racing side of things, obviously right now, maybe not on the cards regardless, but like, I don't know if you've heard me talking about this, but running as a guide just fully allowed me to draw that line in the sand to where when I ran London in 2023, I was able to just be joyful running a time. That was the first time I think post like 2017 when I quit, where I didn't go all out. I kind of ran with a friend for 20 miles and then kicked it in, and I didn't give it my all, but I pushed myself, and I was perfectly happy with the time that was 34 minutes, 36 minutes slower than my personal best.
Yeah.
And I really think the guiding for me, the giving to someone else, the like supporting someone else for their needs, but still being out there was a real a way for me to process that I didn't have to be, giving it everything I had every moment of the day. Like I could still do that, but I could do it in a way that was a different part of life. And I actually personally think at some point I will go back to running hard again, hopefully after this recovery period. But for now, it's okay not to be that way.
Yeah, no, and trust me, I feel the same. There's so many times where it's like, I love the feeling of being able to just like throw down a fast run. I miss it. I wish that I could be able to do that in a perfect world. I would love to be able to do that, but it's kind of like, you know what, this is a situation we're in right now and we can't do that. So it's figuring out I think being dealt like adversity is super valuable in the long run because it makes you, it one gives you perspective. It really makes you learn how to deal with these kind of things, because I was a runner that didn't really deal with a lot of adversity in high school. I didn't really deal with many problems. In college, I started to have more problems, but there were things that like, I was always somebody that was really luckily was able to kind of whip myself into shape super fast. Molly's the same way. That's the one thing I think genetically we kind of share, is that like I could be injured and I could get into shape by the end of the season, like pretty seamlessly. And that is not the case anymore. I cannot do that. And I know that sure, it really sucks that I can't do that, but it's something that I've just had to learn. It's like, okay, this is what we're dealing with and it's okay. And I would love to be able to get back to a point where I can just race somewhat confidently, but right now we are not there. So we are just going to do this for fun in the meantime. And I think we need to, as I'm chronically online, have seen running obviously is having such a big moment. I've been doing this now for over 10 years. And when I started running, it was not cool. And now running is so cool. And everyone is super, I think, caught up in this game of just doing as many races as possible and trying to be the best you can be. And I'm a little bit jaded. I think any college runner is probably a little bit jaded about this if you ask them. But because it's hard, I see all these people they're experiencing those highs, but typically with those highs, you also get lows at some point. It always catches up to you. And for most people, and so I'm just the curmudgeon that's Murr. But I do think those lows, every runner kind of needs to experience them to appreciate the highs more. And also it kind of just really, I don't want to say it's a reality check, but sometimes it is a little bit of a reality check because our bodies are not invincible. And I do think actually a lot of the training that I did in, the last 10 years is catching up to me a little bit now. And maybe, I don't want to say it's causing some of these problems, but I do think I have developed some issues from some of the things that I did that probably weren't the most sustainable. And at the time you're it's fine.
I'll deal with that later. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're a few years down the road, you're wait, I am not fine.
Yes. No, I hear that. Although I would be interested to hear your thoughts here, because you kind of seem like you have the same perspective in that, anytime I meet anyone, last week, I did the most crunchy thing ever. And I went what's called forest bathing, which is where you go for a 3-hour walk in the woods very slowly. You stop often, you sit on the floor and you talk about nature. For me, it was a dream. But we went a mile and a half in 3 hours. But even then I said to them, they kind of were asking all of our experiences with being out in nature. And I said, well, usually I'm running through them and I'm not going slow enough to be able to really take it in this way. And even them, but just in general, everyone I see when I say I had surgery on my Achilles, they're oh, that's got to be so hard for you. And I'm honestly, I'm fine. I know I will probably hit a point where I'm like, God, I'm so sick of this. I just want it to be like healed fully. But I really, as you said about the biking, I really feel similarly that I'm actually most excited to be able to go for an hour hike, walk in the woods. That is the piece that I am looking forward to. Not necessarily the running yet, but I'm enjoying the biking, and I can't wait to get outside on the bike, which is very soon, and hiking. And I feel like I've been able to get to a peace with that, as you said, of just doing these other activities, knowing that running will always be there. I will get back to it. And I will, try again. But right now it's okay to be in like a slower kind of like hibernation phase.
Yeah, no, I like right now I'm enjoying cycling so much, partially because it's just like, it's a sport that doesn't cause me a lot of pain. Running, frankly.
Although saddle sores, have you had any of those?
I have not. This is
I've just got my first one and it's not fun.
Insane behavior of me, but I actually would bike without bike shorts. And so now I'm starting to do it with bike shorts, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel amazing. What? So that I actually like, I don't know why I did that, but so luckily I have, and I'm not riding like a 50-mile ride. No, I like a good hour to 70-minute cycle.
I'm with you.
So, and I love it so much. It's just like a peaceful time. I'm not in pain. I get to see the beautiful scenery. I'm in Wisconsin right now, so it's just like lovely out, and I enjoy it. I like look forward to it so much. And running, I just don't look forward to right now. It's not something that I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to do it, because it does kind of cause me a lot of pain right now. So it's like, sure, it sucks that like that's the situation, but at least I have another outlet to look forward to.
You've heard me talking for many years about the relationship I have with Tracksmith, about how I was given items in 2019, and those same items I use week in, week out. They have had hundreds of uses and they continue to maintain their form. That is my favorite thing about Tracksmith. It's also the best thing environmentally that we can do, is buy quality products that last for a lifetime. And that is something that I cannot encourage you to do more, just to consider where you are spending your money and the quality level of what you are purchasing. Now, I've talked to you about many of the tanks over the years. I have many Harrier tanks, I have many Horizon tanks, I have Twilight tanks, I have basically all of them. But I want to talk about a different one today, and that is the Brighton base layer tank. You've heard me talk about the Brighton base long sleeve, my favorite Tracksmith item of all time. But the Brighton base layer tank is ideal for these summer months. It is merino wool, which is good environmentally, but also is great for absorbing sweat, for not showing that sweat. And it is just a great summer outfit. So if you haven't already checked out the Brighton base layer tank, or for the male portion of clothing, you can also check out the tees. Those are particularly comfortable, and they're really going to be something that you rely on for many years to come. Those Brighton base layer tees, the Brighton base layer tanks. And I encourage you to go check out. As a new Tracksmith customer, you can get $15 off your order of $75 or more by using code TINONEW. And if you are a previous customer, you can use code TINAGIVE to make a donation and to get free shipping. Thank you so much for all the support Tracksmith has given me, and for those of you who have trusted me and seen they truly are the best. Okay, let me ask you a question related to that then. When you said you really enjoy it, you look forward to it, do you ever... I feel like sometimes that little like inner critic in my brain is like, well, if you're out cycling, you damn well better push yourself quite hard. Because it's quite hard cycling. Unless you're like, when you're going up a steep hill, you suddenly feel like you're going to die. But the rest of the time, you really have to put in the effort to actually like challenge yourself for that same way as running. And I find sometimes it's hard, not so much indoors, because I could just put on a TV show and just kind of chill. But when I'm outside, I find it that like drive in me to keep pushing myself is like a little like weed in my brain that I have to be like, it's okay. You don't have to push yourself every time. Yeah, no, I totally like 100% feel that, because there have been some, I would say when I first like I really got into the cycling within the past month, where I'm like now doing it super consistently. And it definitely is hard to push yourself like you do with running. But I'm also at a point where I'm like,
I don't need to push myself that hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I am just here to move my body. And there are some days where I go harder than others, or like, sure, especially like where I am, it's pretty hilly. So I do get it there.
That's good.
But I am finally at a point in my life where I'm like, you know what? There was a time where I did 2 to 3 workouts a week, and I had to do a long run, and I had to do this and that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired. So I'm really just doing it to, like, I'm not on a training plan. I'm just mostly doing it because I want to. So luckily, it's taken me a while to get to that, but I'm at a point where I'm just like, you know what? Like, I'm literally just working out to like sweat and like maybe get my heart rate a little bit up. And it's like a mental health thing. It's not
so good.
So much of a performance thing. So
yeah, no, that's important. And I'm working on that.
It's so hard.
It's hard.
Like, it's so much easier said than done to just be like, it's really not that hard and just go easy. Running, I have a very hard time doing that because it, like with paces, it's really hard. You can compare so easily. But with biking, it's kind of just like biking is something I've never raced with a bike. So I'm just like, you know what? It is what it is. I'm just going to go however fast I feel, and I'm just going to go off of feel. So
yeah, that's so good. That's important. Okay, let's talk Sad Girl Track Club a little bit more, and then we may come back to that in a little while. So you mentioned you used to work for Tracksmith, and that was where you and I first connected.
Yes, I know it was because I was the one that had to send you gear. That was my job.
Yes, no, I do remember that, and you could well have sent me this, what I'm wearing right now.
I did. I actually did. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, well, it is quite funny with them. They'll often say to me, "Do you need anything?" And I'm like, "Nope, I'm good. Yeah. I'm happy with what I got." But no, that was, and it is interesting how we get to these like full circle moments because, I think at that time I was just kind of trying to figure out who the hell I was without my running at the highest level. And then, it was really nice. Like, I've adored Tracksmith from the stage one, and they've been so supportive of me, like even at this point in my life. And so I'm very grateful for them for that. And also introducing me to all these amazing humans. But you said to me before you started recording that people that you didn't feel like what you do now, or maybe people say it's not a real job.
Yeah, no, I do.
Do you know what I always find so funny? If you listen, and I don't know, maybe this isn't the case, maybe yours are more articulate in this than mine, but when I hear my mom or my dad try and explain to other people what I do, and they'll be like, she like blogs and stuff.
Yep.
I'm like,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. No, yeah.
So yeah, like we are in a weird point of where like, both you and I in many ways have these roles that are like undescribable, but we did used to have a role that our like parents would approve of like, oh, I can see what this is and I understand what this is. But I love the fact that there is this part of the world that does provide this job really that is just so. There's a lot of hard stuff, which we'll talk about that in a minute, but there's also such a gift to live this life the way that it is. So to start that, what is your relationship with the word influencer?
Oh, so I always, whenever people say like, what do you do for work? I always say I'm a content creator because I hate using the word influencer. And I do actually think like fundamentally a content creator and an influencer, I do think are different things. And I always try to like explain to people. So yes, I worked at Tracksmith on the marketing team. And I think even back when I worked at Tracksmith, a lot of people didn't realize that I had a job because I worked like on the creative side. So I got to be super involved with the photo shoots and the activations. A lot of my job was coordinating the photo shoots and making sure that samples were where they were ordered and where they needed to be. It was a really cool job. And honestly, it was probably one of the most valuable jobs I've ever worked because I touched so many different areas of the company. And I think it was really important because I also I got to work with other like content creators and people who were of influence. And I started making, and it's funny because like there were people who I made connections with when I was working that job that I now am like kind of in their same cell, which is like super, like Emily Abadi, for example, is somebody who like I also sent her gear, and like I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm sending, and now Emily's like a good friend of mine. It's examples like that. And so from Tracksmith, I did have a very big identity crisis, but I left the company after 2 years because I honestly didn't really see myself being able to grow much there. And I also wanted to move to New York. So I then got a job at 10,000, which is menswear. And I was the producer there. So I produced all of the photo shoots. And that was where I really got a grasp on the concept of influencer marketing and working with influencers and ambassadors. And it was all men, but I worked with a lot of content creators who, one, were making great money and doing way less than I had to do. And I was like, wow, that's a good job. And it wasn't necessarily that I was like, I want to be an influencer, but it very much, I think I hit this point where I was like, oh, like I have all of these skills that these people have who are thriving in their jobs. Let's give this a shot. And it kind of just like organically grew from there. And I do think like a lot of people say like, wasn't that embarrassing having to like post stuff about like yourself online? I don't know why. I just like never really felt the shame of like posting apologetically on the internet. And I think that's like kind of what it takes. And I think I hit it at a right time, luckily, where like now it's a really saturated market and it's very hard to break into. But pretty much like long story short, I got into this because of my experience working in the corporate world and interacting with a lot of content creators and being like, you know what, like I have all of these skills, like I can do this. And that's really how I got into it. I don't love the word influencer because it's just so cringy. But at the end of the day, it's really like the one thing that I find super valuable is because I worked internally at these companies, I know what these companies want from an advertising perspective, like down to a T. And because there's so many, especially when you're producing photo shoots, there's so many details that like the discerning eye does not think about that you need to be really on top of. And that all translates to digital content on apps like TikTok and Instagram. So I think that's why I might not have like the largest following in the world, but I can like make content very well based on like what a brand wants.
Yeah.
And I think that actually served me super well in the long run in being able to do this and like make a really good living off of it. Because I think there's so many people that are always like I think my biggest critique online, the most hate I get is about like that I don't have a job. And I'm like, okay, like, cool. Well, I can't like, I'm not going to fight you on this and you should not be that concerned. Like, honey, I'm fine. I am doing okay. But
I know it is weird, isn't it? That people, I mean, yeah. And there is there's so much, there's some envy there. And I also think, as you said, I feel very much the same, that I don't overthink content of like, I am perfectly happy holding up my phone, going blah, 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 like talking into it post. Like I'm not obsessing over like, did I get this angle? Is this way? And I have realized how terrifying that can be when I've like flipped the camera on someone and I see them like freeze.
Yeah.
And they're like, and I'm like, it's okay. Like, just be yourself. And they're like, I can't. And so, there's definitely some, as you said, you've got the skills and the understanding of what brands need and want. And that is a skill in itself. And, this role of supporting people who need to feel like they belong somewhere or that they are a part of something greater than themselves, like the value that gives people in their lives is worth so much more. I mean, we all know some like people who are stuck in their jobs, they hate it and they'd give anything to get out, but they just don't know a way. So that's where like roles like this, I think I'm so fortunate that I get to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Because it is it's a lot of work, and yes, it's hard to switch off, but there's also so many perks to it.
Yeah, I do think it is like a job that, and I think I'll say too, it's like not a perfect job. And I think the one thing is so hard. Like, I think a lot of people on TikTok have been more open about this. I've seen a lot of videos of content creators being like, why I'm quitting influencing or why I'm going back to a full-time job. And I, from my perspective, I'm like, they're not complaining. They're just being honest here. But so many people, the narrative is like, you're complaining. And I think it's valuable for people to be sharing that kind of information, because from what you see online is very curated, and it is not a perfect job. I'm someone that does not have a manager, so I manage myself. I do all of the back end stuff. I'm in charge of all of my financials, all of the communication between companies, all of the negotiation, and I'm fine doing that. But there's definitely a lot that goes into it that people don't see. And I will say, I do think it's a super isolating job, which I'm someone that loves working with people. And even though you are collaborating with brands, it's not the same as, like working with coworkers. And so that's something I super struggle with. And that's why I've gone back to a corporate role and then went back full-time freelance. And full transparency, I actually over the past year have been in the talks of going back to a corporate job, but I haven't it's hard because I'm trying to find the right opportunity. And frankly, I make more money as a content creator than in a corporate job. And so it's do I want to, but I find myself, there are days where I'm like, what am I doing? I don't feel like I'm living a life worth living all the time. There is a weird, it's a weird environment to put yourself in, because it's a new environment that has not really, this wasn't a thing 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody that needs social interaction to be happy in life. And I definitely miss that kind of stuff. So things will probably change actually in the next few months, potentially. And I won't stop doing content because I still enjoy it. And it's a way that I make a living. But I definitely think it's not the perfect job. There are parts about it that are so amazing and I love, but there are also parts about it that I'm this is not what I want to be doing for the rest of my life. So and I do think that it's a job that you constantly need to be evolving in. So
Yes, so that was actually some of the things I was going to ask you about well, thank you for sharing that firstly, because I think it's good to hear behind the scenes. And my team know that there's been a few occasions where I've almost been at the point of where I'm you know what, I'm just going to go work in a coffee shop. I'm going to become waitress and that'll be that. I definitely had those moments. And one of the things I wanted to ask you related to that, and one of the things that I struggle with, is when you are content creating, it can be very hard to have a relationship that is healthy with your phone, but also to do anything without feeling I should be capturing this. What if I do that? Particularly right now, I'm doing this recovery journey, and over the first 8 weeks, I really was. I don't know whether I would say I did a good job or not, but I was getting little 3 to 5 second clips of me doing things all the time. And that was great for a recovery journey. But now I'm getting to the point where, I'm not doing that anymore. But there is that kind of voice saying you haven't captured anything in a few days, even a few seconds. But it means that you go about your day, and I almost feel like it's one of these futuristic movies where you see in the brain, Iron Man kind of thing. And you're scanning, you're tree. Should I go stand by that tree? Bush. Could be in that bush. It feels like you're constantly scanning and being could that be an idea? No, I don't know about that. Oh, I could do. And that gets exhausting, because it means not only are you always thinking and always idea generating, but you can't really even have your phone with you because it's too tempting to reach for it and make up an argument in your brain of okay, I'm going to spend the rest of my run, the rest of this time just being me. But then you're but this would be really good.
Yeah.
Do you struggle with that?
I feel this to my core because, and I saw, and ironically, I saw this on TikTok, a video about how we now live in a digital world. And I think after, like during the pandemic, like 2020 onward, I think the world has changed in a way that I don't necessarily think is better. And I'm so scared, honestly, for the younger generation because I am so glad that I grew up. Like the iPhone did not come out until I was in middle school. And like I grew up like playing with my siblings and playing like board games and going outside and having feelings of boredom and figuring out how to not be bored. And I look at like I struggle with this so hard because so I have a following on both Instagram and TikTok. And I'll say when I started doing TikTok, that really changed things, not necessarily for the better, because I create like day in the life content. And in order to create that content, I have to be capturing my entire day. And so I'm constantly feeling that of like, okay, do I need to be capturing that? And so I'm constantly taking small videos throughout the day, but it's like I always have to have my phone on me. And as someone who's, you know, has an aspect of storytelling, it's like, well, if I don't capture this, then there's a break in the story. And it really, and I think this is kind of where like people don't realize this stuff where it's like, sure, maybe it doesn't look like I have an average job where I'm not sitting at a desk all day, but my whole day revolves around like mentally, I'm just like, oh my God, I have to literally film all of this. And it's not that it's hard to do that. It's more that it's like my life, I don't get to live it just like, I just want to do nothing. Like, I just want to not have my phone and I want to be able to just live my life without thinking like, oh, this has to go on the internet now. And I really struggle with like, I just would love to not have to look at my phone. And the amount of times people are like, just don't do it then. And it's like, no, but you don't understand. Like, this is how I make my living. So if I don't do it, I don't make a living. So it's a double-edged sword. And I really miss those days that were just like, I didn't have to capture things for social media. And like, yeah. So to your point, I feel that like no other. And I'm really scared now for this younger generation because while digital content can be amazing, I think it can also be really bad for the brain. And I think we are all attached to our phones a little too much. I'm super attached to my phone, like not in a good way. And I think a lot of younger kids, like they just are, the phone is such a crutch. I see now, like this is a really big conversation right now. A lot of states are trying to ban phones in schools. And I'm like, do it, ban the phones. Like they need to do this. I was just listening to a podcast about it too, where it's like your brain develops differently when you're spending that much time on social media. I'm like, I think my head's even like a little unwell from it. So I can't imagine being a kid or like an adolescent that's spending a lot of time on a phone and watching TikTok and watching Instagram and YouTube. And like, I think it's a problem. Long story short.
No, absolutely.
I don't know what the solution is, but I'm a little scared for the future generations.
It is that time of year where we are sweating, constantly sweating, and we need to be taking care of our bodies to make sure that we are not ending up dehydrated, that we are not ending up low on electrolytes. And that is where I love that if you are someone who is unsure of how much you sweat or how much electrolytes you need to refill, or even with your gels, how many you should be taking, you know that you've been told you should be having more than we traditionally thought in the past. At least I have learned that I was definitely underfueling in the past, but just how much should you be using? Well, Precision's fuel and hydration plan, which is free, by the way, you'll fill in some questions and it will tell you exactly what you need. If you need a free consultation on top of that, you can also get that from Precision Fuel and Hydration. And those products, the gels are my favorite gels I've ever had. They go down smoothly. And honestly, during my recovery period, I really missed having them because they just are just enjoyable to take down. I also really love the chews. And yes, the electrolytes, I take those every single day, especially in the summer months. And I encourage you to go check out Precision Hydration. precisionhydration.com. You can use code Tina sent me to get yourself 15% off. There's also links in the show notes to get that discount and also to get that free hydration plan and the free consultation if you want that. I have loved working with Precision, not only for the products and how good they are, how great they taste, and how I don't get flavor fatigue from them, but also just the knowledge that they have that they are so willing to freely share. I encourage you to go to precisionhydration.com and use code Tina sent me. No, I feel the same way. I actually, a few weeks ago, I was sitting on the beach in Santa Monica, and there's certain moments where I feel like I have this sounds ridiculous, but the strength to be like, right, I'm putting my phone in my shoe. I'm going to leave it there. Yeah. And I do. And I'll admit that like at some point during that hour I was sitting there, I took a picture of myself sitting on the beach.
Yeah.
But sitting there and just watching, like it felt like every single person that came by was like filming themselves walking along the beach or filming, like standing there filming the sunset for like 45 minutes, just holding their phone.
Yeah.
And yeah, like there's so much like living that we are doing through our phones. I mean, this isn't just phones. Like I remember being in Disney World and my parents let me use their, what was it called? The recorder.
Like a video camera?
Yeah, video camera thing.
Yeah.
And I remember filming The Lion King, which is so stupid because like seriously, it's not like you're gonna like, you know what I'm gonna do today? I'm gonna rewatch my video recording.
No, and I kind of did those things too when I was a kid because I still grew up in an age where like we had like digital cameras, but we didn't have phones. But no, I'm the same way. And I think back to those things where I'm like, why did I do that?
Yes, but like we do so much of the same with like concerts when people film them, and you're like, you are literally missing this moment. But I was watching and I thought, how weird would this look? Like you can see how our grandparents struggle when you're like, literally everyone is looking down and they're not only taking content, but then sitting there and going through it while you're there. And so I think about that and I also am very conscious because of my job and the amount of content I have to capture of my kids being self-obsessed and narcissistic. Because I am so careful to not film myself in front of them because I don't want them to think that's what they should be doing is walking around and being like, and today I'm going to go do this, like staring at themselves.
I literally have like dark thoughts about like, I don't think I can ever have kids because it's like such a scary world to have to like put them into now with, I think phones they are both like, have created so much good and so much bad in this world. And it's really hard. I was just interviewed for an article with Runner's World. And like, I was talking about how I think it's tough because like, it is such a resource, but it's also such a damaging thing in our society. And it sounds so dark, but I think about these, like, I think I probably spend way too much time with my own thoughts. And it just really makes you think about like, a lot of it comes back to like the sustainability and the longevity of this for us as like humans. Like, how is this going to be affecting us? And I do think it's like especially now that like so many people want to be content creators, because I think a lot of them just at face value see like, oh, I can make a lot of money doing this. So now it's just like so many people are on their phones, so many kids are doing it. And like the amount of times I have talked to a parent and said like, oh, I'm a content creator, or it comes up that I'm an influencer, and they say like, my kid wants to do that. Or like, I know like somebody that wants to do that. It's like a lot of people want to do it. And so it just keeps feeding this like people being on their phones. And I'm just like, can we just live life? Like part of me just wants to be in like the 80s right now.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't have cell phones. A part of me feels like I would have lived my best life in like the 70s or the 80s.
I agree. I actually was at having dinner with my husband the other day, and he said we were asking each other like questions of like deep dive questions. And the question was like, what's the one piece of technology you think you could live without? And without a hesitation, I was like, my phone. And he was like, really? And I was like, I would ditch that thing in a second if I could. Like, I really wish I could get back, like exactly what you said. The days where it would be like, I'll sending each other like a phone call and a landline or like a, an email or something like, I'll see you at 12 p.m. on Tuesday. And then like, that was it. Like, and you had to stick to it because there was no way of telling that person.
I think about those things where I'm like, and I do think, and this is one thing I actually struggle with a lot, where I'm not a super anxious person, but one thing that does give me a lot of anxiety, like I'm so bad at responding to texts, DMs, stuff like that, because I do not think our brains are built to be as on it as we are expected to be with answering texts, emails, DMs, like always needing to be on call. I do not think that is something that is normal. And so I actually have like no problem not responding to my text because I'm just like, I don't think that this is what we were like evolved to do. So part of me is like, oh my God, if we could just get rid of phones completely, do it. Like, sure. Would I have a job? No, but I would figure it out.
Yes.
Like the reason I think I also went into this space is because I love like visuals. I love photo production and video production, but that doesn't just, if we didn't like, I wanted to work in magazine, like way back in college. I studied journalism with a magazine concentration. And I think I love producing photo shoots, and I've just worked it in a way now that it's like the photo shoots are produced on my phone. But I would love, and this is partially why I kind of want to go back to a more like corporate job, is that I love that production. That's why I loved producing the photo shoots at Tracksmith. It was a really hard experience. Like being on set for a photo shoot is actually one of the most demanding jobs ever, but it was such a rewarding job. I loved the process and the cinematic feel of it. And you're creating such beautiful, amazing content. Not saying that you can't do that on a phone, but it's like, it's a little bit different when you're on like an actual photo shoot set. And I think I probably would like thrive very well with that. So I don't know. It's something I like think about actually way too often and is giving me probably like an existential crisis. But I do think these are things we kind of do need to think about because I don't know where the world's going to be in 10 years, but it could be bad if we keep going down the road of like being glued to our phones.
Yeah, no, I actually, I'm, this is not where I anticipated we would end up talking about. And it's quite funny that you and I have ended up talking about this. But I'm quite glad I found a kindred spirit who feels the same way because I actually do personally believe that we are starting to hit a capacity to where people, the people that grow the most, evolve the most, and are the most content, which will then show to other people, are the people who are able to remove themselves from these situations and, I dream of like putting my phone away for a weekend.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've got quite good at doing like just for me things. Like I mentioned about sitting on the ocean, sitting on the beach, or like doing some things. I find when I'm in nature, that's when I can do it the most, when I'm immersed in it. But yeah, I do think that there is getting to be a point where people are going to be like, I need to be away from this thing. And it will be, somehow that will probably be monetized. But it's
literally, I think like there are apps that you can get now to like block you from using your phone. I'm like, oh my God, have we gotten to this point? Like,
I don't even feel like those helped. I tried one of those and it just ended up being so like it would make me wait 20 seconds to open the app, but I ended up turning it off because I'd be like, well, I need to do this thing for this brand, so I'd have to turn it off. So yeah, I just feel like it's going to have to get to, well, like there's so many documentaries that have shown that it's the do not disturb setting, those things were all set to just keep you on your phone still because you're twiddling with the settings. So
I totally feel it.
I really like find, and you said about being isolating this role, but I think that one of the biggest ways we can combat it is when we are with another human being in person is to put it away on silent. Because it just, I find that's when my cup feels the most filled up. And that's the perk of the job for me, is getting, and Camp Strava was very much that. I barely looked at my phone that whole weekend because there was just so many amazing humans to talk to in the moment that I was like, I don't want to be looking at my phone when I could be talking to this person.
I feel like that was an event that there needs to be more events in the industry like that. And I think that's kind of the thing where it's like when you're put in those environments, it's amazing as a content creator. Like there need to be more events where you can connect with other like-minded people, or people who, not necessarily that it's like it's serving you to connect with these people, but I do think this is an industry where it helps so much to be in person, instead of like trying to do this all online. And it was really like, I think there were so many productive, cool conversations being had there, because you're just in the room, you turn and you're just like in the room with the coolest people ever. You're like, oh my God, like what other scenario would I be doing this? And it's like, you're not going to not have conversations with these people compared to if it's happening all online. It's just so much harder and slower. The process is a lot slower, even if you want. And I just think like there are so many amazing, really cool people in this like digital space that, and I know it's like you meet them in person and you're like, wow, you are so awesome. I never would have known this about you had I not met you in person. And I think like I'm somebody that I love the in-person kind of stuff. It's harder to find in this space because just like it's harder to organize. But I do think stuff like that is really key, and I think needs to happen more. It's just hard figuring out like how are we going to do that?
I actually had a really funny moment with Molly at Camp Strava where I was like, this is just a perfect example of like a real life human situation where I was looking at the trail mix to get some, and she was like, do you want me to hold your crutches while you fill that up? And I was like, sure. Okay. So I handed her my crutches and I'm like filling up. And then I'm like, well, better make sure no one gets like a clip of you holding some crutches, or like the internet world will like go abuzz with like
Molly Seidel on crutches.
Yeah. But what was I going to say? I definitely agree that it is needed. But the interesting thing is the people like yourself, or like Mike Kafuzzi, or like Alex Hermanson, like those people who are the most like real, raw, relatable are the people that we're craving, which kind of shows a representation of what we as a society want. We don't want the curated, here is my life and stuff, it's so amazing, anymore. We want no, nor can you, nor can I. But like those are the people that people are craving right now, because we just want those real interactions. And I've mentioned this before, when I had just had my surgery, people really wanted to talk about it. And I honestly think it was because everyone is so sick of the, hey, how are you? Good, thanks. How are you? Conversation that isn't actually a conversation. It's just a dead end, stupid thing that we say. That gave them something raw and vulnerable to actually have a conversation about. And we just are craving more of that. So the more face-to-face interactions we can put ourselves in, even if it's like a random person at a coffee shop or like a cashier at the grocery store, or like standing next to someone in an elevator. Like, I really think that's where we're missing out. And so thank you for like giving those interactions online, but also to your vulnerability today and sharing that it's not always what it seems. Because
it's not perfect, you guys.
Yes, I know that all too well.
And I will say that's why I think like Sad Girl Track Club is one of my favorite things. Like it's funny because that was something that really started just as kind of like a joke. But I found, and I think this is kind of like as a creative, this is kind of how you have to lean into certain things and like throw things at a wall until you see what sticks. And that was something where it was like, oh, I realized it resonated with a lot of people, and it wasn't something that people were really doing online, and just like joking about things and being silly and not serious, because running is a super serious sport to some people. Like some people are really serious about it. And it was like, oh, like people actually, they want to know that they are not crazy when they deal with these stupid, like these problems that seem really stupid, but like they're not. We actually care a lot about it. And I think it was like refreshing for people to have like a little bit of an outlet, because I do think there is a problem where so much of our online personas are like the most polished version. And I'm like, I think people appreciate it more when it's not all roses and daisies and perfect. So I don't know. It's something that like, that is an outlet that I love to be able to work on, because I do think it's like, I think it's doing more good than harm. I don't want to create like content that's going to make people feel bad about themselves or feel like they're behind or feel like they're not doing enough. And I think like, even if I'm making like silly self-deprecating jokes with raccoon memes, like if that gets the point across, like good, cool, let's keep going. So
I feel you. And I am so grateful for you for what you are doing here. It is so important. Last quick question, favorite Tracksmith item? Oh
my God, favorite. I have like every Tracksmith item.
I know. So what's yours?
The ones that I still like actually really use to this day are, and this was developed while I was there, are those, and I'm trying to think, I think it's called like the lightweight sock or something.
Oh, interesting.
It's those, I'm trying to, wow, this is like actually so bad. I'm like, where did I get the name of the sock? Because I can name like every single colorway, every single style. But it's that like, it's the sock that is not merino wool.
Okay.
It's a good sock. Like they hold up. And one thing like that I still find so funny to this day that I actually use when I ski they got a lot of, like, I don't want to say they got hate for this, but they created a merino wool underwear.
I saw that. Yeah. I don't have any. Yes.
I have a few pairs because I got to keep quite a few samples during my day, and I have a few of the samples, and like, it's such a silly item, but I wear them under my snow pants.
I love that.
So you might need a pair of merino wool underwear, but I love those socks. They are a really good performance sock.
Got it. I'll put a link in the show notes.
Great for running, great for cycling. But I have like, I've literally worn everything. And the Brighton base layer, I could sell anyone. Let me just note, the way I got my job at Tracksmith was I started out working as a retail employee in the store, and I had to work my way up. And so I was damn good at selling stuff in that store, and I could sell anyone a Brighton base layer because it is a really good base layer. It is great. So
that is my favorite item. Yeah. Yes, by far. Thank you so much. I really loved our conversation today. I appreciate all that you continue to do in the space, and I am excited to see what the next milepost is.
We'll see. Where I always like, I know, like, I'm going to be in a very different place in like 1 year. I don't know where that's going to be, but it's going to be really different than now.
Well, I look forward to following along. So we're supporting you, and just appreciate you. So thanks for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Before we go any further, I just want to give a quick shout out to the Running for Real team. Without them, I would not be able to do barely anything compared to what I'm able to do today. They are behind the scenes. They are there for me. I am just so appreciative of them. To Jeremy Nessel, our podcast editor, audio consultant, and someone who's been with me since the start. To Sally Pontarelli, our content and operations manager, who is there day to day doing all the things to help me be successful. To Kelsey Wang, our head of design, and Louise Murphy, our associate designer. And finally, to Sandy Gutierrez, our photographer and content strategist. I am appreciative of all of you and wouldn't be able to do what I do without you. Wow, that definitely went a lot deeper and a lot more raw than I thought we were going to go. But I really appreciate Izzy in the way that she was able to share so openly and so honestly. And I think the conversations like this are more needed in our space. So I'm glad that we were able to have that today. And I'll put links in the show notes to some of the things we mentioned today at runningforreal.com/episode 406. And I'm also going to put links in there to the companies that make this possible for this podcast. You heard us talk about Tracksmith. You heard Izzy's favorite items. You also heard the item we both believe is the bestseller and most important. I really love that Brighton base. And our friends Precision, who can give you your fuel and hydration needs. You can go to runningforreal.com/episode 406. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next week.